This video is going to be another engineer task. I'm going back to the basics on minefields. And this video is going to be on phony minefields. Now, if you look it up in the manuals, you are not going to find a lot of guidance on phony minefields. And the reason for that is you really have to know what is the standard in a standard minefield, a real minefield, before you can attempt a phony minefield. So then when it comes to phony minefields, the guidance that you need to know is it has to look real. So minefields in the U.S. military now, we have a standard frontage and a standard depth. Frontage is the front side, the front edge that is towards the enemy. Depth is how far from the first mine to the rearmost mine in that minefield. When you're doing a phony minefield, you are trying to mimic a live minefield as much as possible without being too obvious that you're doing that on purpose. Now, the easiest way to do this with the U.S. military is the U.S. military by doctrine will mark at least 3 sides of a minefield with a fence, and if you have them, minefield marker signs. The 3 sides that you will mark is your 2 flanks and the rear. And a lot of engineer officers, in order to keep from getting in trouble, will also just tell you to close off the front. So we could do a phony minefield where we have the correct style of fencing going all the way around. Now, the standard fencing on a U.S. minefield, typically on the front, is going to be triple standard. And then on the sides and rear, usually we're going to put in just a single roll of concertina. Now, the other thing that you can put in there is double strand frat fence. And double strand frat fence is just barbed wire. You have one which is strung at about chest height, and the other one that is strung down between knee to crotch height. And then on the top strand, you would put your minefield marker signs. Minefield marker signs are red. It'll say mine on it. And usually it'll have a symbol on there telling you what type of mine it is. At least on the older ones it was. So some of the symbols that you would see would be a big white circle. On the red placard it would say mine up here. This is all red around here, big white circle. That would tell you that it's anti-tank mines. If you've seen one, and I haven't seen these in a long time, but you would have one that would have the circle, and then it would have 2 white lines coming off of it. That told you it was anti-personnel, and it would say mine across the top up here. Those markers were supposed to be located in the center of each set of pickets. So if you had the pickets 10 meters apart, well, at that 5-meter mark is where you would have one of the signs. And outward, facing away from the minefield, would be the direction that it would say mine on it. If you were going 20 meters between your pickets, like here on the sides and the rear, you know, it just depends how you set it up, how much material you have, then your sign would be at the 10-meter mark for that roll. Now, another thing that used to do to reinforce the idea that you got a minefield here is you might, you know, forget to bring all the residue with you. So off on the side, back here behind the fake minefield, you would have where your minefield or your mine dump was at. where the mines were fused and armed during the laying process. Well, maybe what you'll do, you'll forget a pile of crates back here. And you just got them tossed together or, you know, stacked, whatever. Just that pile of empty crates sitting back there. And then maybe you also forget some of the dunnage, wrappers and stuff like that might be, and cans might be laying all over the ground also. So then that enemy scout or officer comes up, he's scanning with his optics, he sees that stuff, that'll tell him that, holy shit, maybe there's actually mines in here. Maybe we chased those Americans out before we got here. They weren't able to get everything out of here. Now, another thing that was done is you can put in phony mines. You're not really going to do a phony minefield with surface laid. The only way you can pull that off is if you're using actual training mines and they are spray painted to look exactly like the live ones. So with US training mines, like this, they're blue. And I got a M15 laying around somewhere that's blue metallic also. That's the one that we would probably use in a phony minefield if it's surface laid. You'd take that and you would spray paint it green, as close of a green color as the live mine as possible. Then you might lay those mines in a row in front that they can't see or can barely see through the grass or whatever. And then you'll probably have a second one where you might have a few that they could see that it's in the quote-unquote correct spacing. You may not have all of them, and then you won't have any that'll be visible in your Charlie row, your third row. That might be the only way you can pass off a surface laid. But with a buried minefield, a common trick, and yes, this has been done against the U.S. military. I did talk to some engineers that were in the first Gulf War. And they came across indicators that there was a minefield ahead of them laid by the Iraqis. So they got out and they had to clear it. They didn't want to waste a MICLIC, a mine clearing line charge. So they had to dismount with their metal detectors, which would have been PSS 11s at the time, and try to locate the mines. Well, what the Iraqis did, they buried in the ground car rims and other pieces of metal in the ground in the correct pattern for a real minefield. So what you can do, you can have your end row markers and that stuff set up. Maybe you'll leave them visible, you know. Your pickets here with the little flag off of it. Your pickets over here, the other end row marker with this little flag off of it. And then you'll go down and you'll bury in the ground, say, a car rim here. Maybe here you're going to bury, you know, a piece of a metal box, maybe an ammo can. You know, and you just keep going down, burying large metallic objects all the way down the correct distance for your mine row, going all the way down. And then you may not camouflage them correctly. You may not do it just right. You might have it be a little too obvious that something's buried there. You know, there's too much dirt left there with, you know, that clump of sod sitting on top, but there's that ring of dirt around it. You know, some little indicator to tell that enemy that, holy shit, something's buried there. Maybe they were tired, you know, it was a new soldier or something, and he didn't do it quite right. And that guy gave it away to us. We know there's a minefield there. Now, I mentioned what you could do. And this is against U.S. doctrine, okay? According to U.S. doctrine, phony minefields do not have any live mines in them. But what you could do is you could put in some live mines. Two ways you could go about this. You could potentially, that first row, that alpha row, you could put in an actual row of live mines. Or, in front of that, have your irregular outer edge. Well, on that irregular outer edge, you could put your live mines. Another option could be to really mess the enemy up. They go through, they start clearing, and they realize, holy shit, this is a fake minefield. Keep pushing ahead. But then that very last row, that Charlie row or that Delta row, you go through and you put in live mines. So at that point, they've now found this up here at the very front edge. Oh, this is fake up here. And then they see the other little marker stuff, you know, indicators that, hey, maybe there's something there, but they know it's fake because it's a fake minefield. They start driving in, and then there's explosions happening. As they start hitting those mines on that rearmost row. That's going to cause problems, won't it? Need proof of that? Look at what's happening in Ukraine. Ukrainian troops driving into the minefields, vehicle gets knocked out and they have to dismount inside a minefield. So we end up with a vehicle knocked out here, vehicle knocked out here. There's probably other guys right behind them. They got to slam on the fucking brakes, and now they're going to start wondering, these signs that we're seeing out here for mines that we thought were fake, holy shit, what if those are real? So then they still have to go through. They now have to dismount, clear up to these vehicles to provide first aid, and then clear around their paths here. Every little indicator on their mine detectors that something may be there. They have to check every single indication and confirm if there's a mine there or not. Now, someone had brought up a question in my comments about IR signatures of landmines. Okay, this is another story from the first Gulf War. Reportedly, Apache pilots, as they were going across the desert, crossing the Iraqi defenses to start hitting the Iraqi tanks at the points where we were going to breach at, as they were flying across the desert, they looked down with their night vision. And they started to see those landmines in the sand. These were buried mines. Well, what was going on, or what happens, is the heat from the day heats that metallic object in the ground, that mine. And then as the air temperature cools, the ground cools, those metallic objects, those plastic landmines also, give off that heat at a different rate than the dirt around it. You can use your night vision goggles and your thermal optics to identify the location of every landmine on the ground. And also large rocks. Large rocks will probably appear in there also, but you know, it shows you the indicators where the mines are. And this subscriber was wondering, well, is there any way we can conceal this thermal signature from the mine so that the enemy can't come through and use their night vision goggles to locate the mines? And I told them that actually, according to U.S. doctrine, we don't want to do that. We want them to be able to see our mines with the night vision. Why? because we could go through and duplicate a minefield as there, putting in a phony minefield, burying large metallic objects in the ground that are the same size and shape of our mines. And the enemy that's coming forward, you know, they're scanning with those night vision to see if there's mines there. They're getting those false indications, but they have to expend the time and effort to confirm that each indication is real or fake. The purpose of a phony minefield is to either slow your enemy's advance or just plain get them to turn to go to another direction. If they decide to commit to clearing a phony minefield, they have to slow down. They either have to expend a mine clearing line charge to make the lane going through the phony minefield, or they have to dismount their troops on the ground with mine detectors and clear the lanes going all the way through. Even if you get all the way through here and you find nothing but phony indications all the way through, doctrinally, every engineer, regardless of the country, regardless of the military, has to continue forward to confirm that each indication is real or fake. He cannot declare it a phony minefield until he's cleared all the way through. And even then, all he can say is he has a cleared lane. Now, yes, I am aware there are other types of assets than just Micklicks. You have mine rollers. You have mine plows. You also have vehicles like the Husky and the Meerkat. But those all take time. You can't just keep plowing through at 40 or 60 miles an hour when you come across a minefield. You have to stop and you have to go through, check ahead, and clear a lane. So what ends up happening? The enemy's expending the effort here trying to get through this fake minefield. That then allows your observation post, who's back here hidden somewhere, he sees the enemy's stopped up there. He gets on his radio. Red leg. This is Oscar Papa 3. Fire mission, over. Fire mission received. Send it. Red leg, this is Oscar Papa 3. Fire mission, Bravo 4. I say again, Bravo 4. Fire for effect. These guys then start freaking out back here because artillery's going off. You know, do they charge ahead, possibly into the minefield? Do they pull back? What do they do? Chaos. You now get some of the ideas on, with phony minefields, how to make them look correct to trick your enemy, and also why you do it. Things to consider. Now, for all my engineer brothers in the Patriot and Militia movements, always remember, essayons.